So, hello everyone. Welcome to Refu-Poets. My name is Ato. Welcome again. We are doing the Refu series once more, and today we are joined with various guests from various different organizations that we are going to learn from today. So, I'll let you guys start joining, and while you do, I will introduce what your Refu-Poet is. Refu-Poet is an art space that uses art to tell refugee stories of trials and triumph. And during this COVID-19 period, we saw it fit to discuss the refugee matters and see how COVID-19 has impacted on refugees during this time. So keep joining us. I will try and see whether we can go to Facebook as well. We will be reading your comments live, so be sure to post your comments and everything right here. Just getting it on Facebook and we can start. Yes, I think we're also now live on Facebook. So my name is Atieno. I am the founder of Refu-Poet, and thank you so much for joining us. I will now just take a round with my guests, and we'll get to know who they are and what they do and what organization they are in and what activity that organization is particularly in. So we'll start with Charity. I will unmute Charity, and Charity can introduce herself and tell her what she does. And yeah, let's get to know Charity.
Hi,
Welcome.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Faith, for this opportunity. I'm happy to be a part of this discussion. My name is Charity Wangoi. I work for Kituo cha Sheria, specifically the Forced Migration Program. We are a non-profit, non-government organization, and for this particular program, we focus. Our main focus is on refugees and asylum seekers. So we give legal advice, offer court representation, do a lot of detention monitoring and border monitoring that involves going to prisons, police stations to assist refugees and asylum seekers. We also give trainings to court users, government officials, police officers, and the like. So basically, we offer legal support as one of the partners of UNHCR in this space for refugees and asylum seekers. I'm a legal officer. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charity. That's perfect. Let's go to Dr. John. Introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this forum, Faith. I'm Dr. John Masiga. I work for the National Council of Churches of Kenya. Specifically, my work is as the health coordinator of the Urban Refugee Program. Basically, we are an implementing partner to UNHCR on matters health in the urban space. That's not the only thing NCSK does. NCSK has a very huge portfolio, but that we can visit in our website and see. But basically, what we do in the urban is to help refugees, assist refugees access healthcare within Nairobi and the surrounding areas. And this is something we've been doing since 2013. I'm a doctor by profession. Thank you. Back to you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor. Let's head over to Jamin and get to know him as well. Karibu, Jamin.
Thank you, Faith, for this opportunity. Thank you for the platform that Refu-Poet is actually bringing. My name is Jamin from the International Rescue Committee. IRC is an international organization dealing with response to a humanitarian crisis. targeting all categories of forced migrants, and specifically in the urban setup, we help in doing livelihood support, including vocational skills training and business grants to our persons of concern who are refugees, and partly also helping some Kenyans. And we contribute towards advocacy initiatives in making the policy environment conducive for refugees. I'm a protection officer under the Urban Refugee Program.
Thank you so much, Jamin. Let's head over to Bahati. Welcome, Bahati. Please tell us who you are, what you do. Bahati? Bahati, I think you can unmute yourself.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
So that we can hear you.
My name is Bahati Gislin. I'm the co-founder and executive director for Kintsugi. Yeah, Kintsugi is a strange word. People think it's a Swahili word, but it's a Japanese word. Yeah, it's a philosophy that's also developed by the Japanese belief that a broken pottery can be amended. So they amend it with gold to make it more beautiful and more precious. So looking at the refugee experiences, I believe that no matter what refugees have gone through, they can still be amended and become very valuable human beings, even better than how they were before. You can find more about that in the website. So in Kintsugi is a refugee-led organization. We do several things. We basically our main role is to be a link between the organization, big NGOs and the refugee community. We are like a liaison between the community and the big organization. So what we do, because we operate in the community, so we basically give information to the community of the services available. Also do what is called capacity building, where we train refugees in various skills. We also do what is called, we have our annually event that is called African Refugee Peace Marathon. We've been doing it 2 years. We were supposed to do it this year, but the coronavirus came in and it spoiled everything. But we basically going to continue it in the future. The purpose of that marathon is to say thanks to the government of Kenya and the people of Kenya for being kind to refugees, and also to bring coexistence between refugees and Kenyan society, because that Kenya are champion in athleticism. So we want to just be with them in the things that they are better in, to also express our solidarity and our love to them. Another thing that we do, we also do English. Language is one of the key components for someone to make it to a foreign country. So most of the refugees, when they are here, they cannot speak Swahili or English. So we basically train them in those language for them to be able to go there and earn their living. So I think I'll stop for now.
Yeah, and I think you have touched on something that is the basis of this discussion today. And today we are discussing refugees and COVID-19. And you have already mentioned that the Peace Marathon has been affected by COVID-19. Perhaps you can share with us and the audience what is the implication of COVID-19 on the livelihood of refugees at this time.
Okay, thank you so much for that. But I think that, when I was looking at these things, the way it affected the refugees, apart from the war that made the refugee fled from their country, the second largest thing that really troubles refugees' life is COVID-19. And this is by experience. I've been a refugee for 11 years in Kenya. So when I say this, I know what I'm talking about. And the problem is everyone was at home locking themselves down to be able to see what is really happening to refugees. But we were fortunate to be with them, see how they were struggling, because some of them, the key component that refugees were using to cope with their daily lives was what is called solidarity, being together, helping each other, supporting each other, pulling each other. So now that everyone was told to stay in their houses, even those who had some small resources in their house were very keen on not spreading it or sharing it because they are not sure how much it's going to last. So that made the refugees suffer. You know, refugees were used to look at the NGO surrounding them. So nowadays there were no NGO because most of the offices were closed. It was very hard for refugees. They were going through a very, very, very traumatizing moment. That for me, it's the second hardest thing that refugee has ever faced. So if like where my organization operates, like in Kasarani, Kayole, Kabiria, and Rongai, even in Isli, the places that are our area scope. So we've been trying to basically try to support where we can. But the problem that we've been facing in most is that we could not find information because the refugee were nowhere to be seen. You could not call them to give them information, and the people were really stranded in their houses. Some of them have no way of communication. Some of others have not have smartphones to be able to read what is happening out there. Some of others have not TV in their houses, so they were like stay in their house, but they don't know why they're supposed to stay in their house. So we had a very big job to be able to tell them what is really happening. And another thing is it really affected completely their in terms of economic life. You know, urban refugees are basically people who struggle. They walk around, they do different businesses. But for now, with all what was happening, everything went a mess, and the refugee really suffered. Maybe I'll elaborate in that later, but what I can tell you is that refugees are going through one of their hardest moments since they arrived in this country.
Thank you for that, Bahati. Let me bring in Dr. John Masiga. During this time, I know testing is a huge thing for now. In order to think refugees are being tested, or are they being tested?
Okay. I want to just give a very brief overview of how the COVID strategy is within Nairobi and within Kenya. Number one, this is a government-led response. Number two, the virus, the nature of the disease itself, at this point in the pandemic, is widespread community spread, community transmission, what we call local transmission. That means that the disease has already embedded itself into the communities. As such, ever since the epidemic started in Kenya, it's a pandemic because it's worldwide, but it's an epidemic in Kenya. The strategy has been evolving, and that includes testing. Maybe the what I can say is refugees have access to the testing, but the testing is targeted. The testing is led by the government because the strategy has it takes into account that the testing might be costly. Number one, to scale it up might be a bit over difficulty. The access to testing also might be an issue. And then number two, to avoid wastage and to just pinpoint where the foci of where the areas of intense transmission are, that's where now the efforts are, so that to make it more efficient. Yeah. So within that space, within that realm, the refugees are able to. Let me give you an example. When the government took down Isli area, for instance, they initiated a mass testing exercise within that area, and everyone, including refugees, it was open to everyone, including refugees. The refugees' health is not isolated to the nationals' health because this is a public health issue. Yes, but so far so good. We've not had any report of any COVID positive refugee case within Nairobi. There's only one positive case which traveled here and went back to Kakuma, but this was an individual from Kakuma. Yeah, but and it's reported under Kakuma. But that does not mean that the refugees might not have COVID, because, like I said, majority of the cases are asymptomatic. They don't show symptoms. So, and the testing is targeted, so it might not really cover everyone. But should there be a need and should any refugee have symptoms or any symptoms of COVID, they are able to access the testing. That is available to both the refugees and the Kenyans. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's really informative because like we know that refugees, before they are able to access some services, they really have to show documents, you know. But it's really encouraging to isolated from the rest of the population. They also get the test and get the health services, because I also had a question that I had reserved, that whether refugees also access the same, you know, health facilities isolated for COVID-19, and I think you've already mentioned that, and I think that's really good to hear. Let me bring in Charity. So Charity, you're in the legal sector. Are there any legal policies? Are there any policies currently right now that are penned down to deal with the effects of COVID-19 on refugees at this time? And if not, should there be any policies that the legislators should be dealing with or trying to put down in order to protect the livelihood of the refugees?
Okay, thank you for that question. Just as Dr. Masinga had earlier said, that the
Charity, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes, I can.
I'm
Can
trying
you
to.
hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I was saying,
Yes, we can hear you.
as Dr. Masika had alluded earlier, that the approach to COVID-19 is holistic. It covers both host community, that is Kenyans, and refugees. So as is, you've noticed that there have been new directives from that were issued by the government that touches on the Public Health Act and the Public Order Act. This would include the issues of them staying at home and the curfew hours within the country. All these policies that are targeted towards COVID-19 also apply to refugees. So we cannot isolate specific policy regulations to target only refugees, because the approach is holistic. And as you are aware, the management of refugees is also a government issue. So there is no specific to refugees as in like the Refugees Act, because the approach is holistic, and all people are included, both the refugees and the host community. Yeah. So the curfews apply to both host and refugees. The staying at home principles, the WHO guidelines, all those both international and local policies and laws that are targeting the approaches of COVID-19 all apply to refugees and asylum seekers and Kenyans. Yes. So the only issues are now with regards to the cushioning of most of these refugees and asylum seekers, and them being included as into the cushioning kit, if I may call it so, because the government said that they're going to give funds to vulnerable communities. And one of the issues that we experience as partners is that it seems as if the refugees and asylum seekers are not included as per se specifically. We all are aware that they are vulnerable communities when they are part of marginalized communities. But you see, if it's not specifically stated as a category of persons who are supposed to be assisted, then it's very gray, and so implementation becomes a problem. Yeah, so maybe that's the only challenge in terms of how they are trying to assist the refugees and asylum seekers. Because so not only refugees, also asylum seekers in this case as well. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about policy. Yeah.
Okay. Let me bring in Jamin as well to the conversation. Jamin, you're in the IRC. Are there any specific sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Are there any specific opportunities or interventions that IRC has taken during this period to just assist refugees during this time?
Thank you for that question. The impact of the COVID-19 has highly affected refugees, as the earlier speakers have actually said, and therefore disrupted their way of life and what
Yeah.
exactly they have been doing over time. One of the biggest problems that refugees have is always about the social network. Since they have run away for displacement purposes, then the family structure and the community structure is always not strong. Secondly, the fact that our policy environment does not include them formally into our employment and wage space makes them then be in a position to participate only in the informal sector, which is hardly hit by the COVID-19. In terms of responses, therefore, we have had to do adjustments that we were supporting refugees to start businesses and to actually have vocational skills training, but now institutions have been closed and we cannot move that particular route. But those that were actually doing businesses, then we have stepped in to look at how then do we give them some little stipend for them to be in a position to buy food and help alleviate them from some of the impact of the COVID-19. Though I will acknowledge that in the entire space that we are in, that the needs that refugees have, now that most of their livelihood have been completely shut, are beyond what we are in a position to assist. And therefore, only the most vulnerable get some little assistance, which is subsistence assistance, for them to be in a position to survive. Yes.
I think that's really lovely. And Bahati, I also saw that there are some measures that Kintsugi has taken to assist refugees, especially in terms of things like that. Perhaps you can also mention to us some of the interventions that Kintsugi has taken during this time to assist refugees. And I also think I would like to ask a question from something that Charity said on how the government is dealing with COVID-19, wholesomely. It's not separating the refugees and asylum seekers from Kenyans. Do you think, as a refugee, do you think the government should have policies that specifically target refugees and aim to cushion refugees during this time, or do you think it's okay for the government to just deal with both populations equally?
Yeah, okay. I think in these circumstances, there's no way the government can avoid to put refugee aside, because if refugees are not being tested, you know what will happen? They will meet with the local, and then it's an obvious situation. They have everyone. You don't even need to be a refugee, even a foreigner who is here needs to be tested.
Bahati's network is.
Oh, you cannot hear me properly? Can you hear me now?
Okay, I think Bahati's network is not stable. So to Dr. John. Oh, Bahati, you're back. Did you hear the question
Yeah, I
pointed to you?
Yeah, I had that.
Yeah. Okay, you can answer.
Okay, fine. This is what I was saying. For the government, for these circumstances, the government will not have any choice not to include refugees, because everyone has to be tested. Either you're a Kenyan or you're not a Kenyan. And if a refugee is not being tested, then they're going to contaminate others. So I think for these circumstances, as a refugee, I feel that it's an obligation for the government and from everyone who is in Kenya, whether you're a Kenyan or not, to get tested. But when I come back to to the maybe to other measures, maybe which some refugees don't feel like they are included in terms of stipend that maybe some poor people are being supported with, some governments, because refugees sometimes are feeling like poor people are being asked to give their number, maybe to be given something to support them during this period. Why not us? But you asked me a question about what Kintsugi is doing. I'm not going into that so much. Let me just go into what Kintsugi is doing to support refugees. Since this pandemic started, we were at the center of the community, and then our office did not close because there was no way we could close our office. So we had so many people who were coming to our office. What we did was to mobilize and to lobby for more food in our office. So we started supporting people with food. And because that was the most need for refugees, they did not even need money because they were feeling unsafe to even go to the supermarket to go and do some their shopping. They felt that bringing food to them was the best way that to help them. So what we did, mobilize food, and then we were able to support so far around 350 families, and including we also supported over 550 Kenyan families, because it's not only refugees that we support, we also were targeting also some vulnerable Kenyan within our area of scope. So we help people in Kasarani, we help people in Rongai, we help people in Ngong, Kajiado. We also work with people from Italy when they were locked down, but because you have some social workers in Italy, so we are sending money to them. Then they were doing shopping and distribute, because there was no any other way for us to reach them. That the only way was just to send money to our social worker, and then they could do some shopping and distribute money to refugees. So another thing we did, we established a center of information. This was after the incident of the guy who killed himself at UNHCR. You remember what happened there? So we thought that some refugees are because being in their houses, sometimes they are facing trauma, and maybe they need to talk to someone, and maybe there's no one to talk to them. Because I believe that person who killed himself at UNHCR, if he could even have someone who could talk to him a little bit, even if for 10 minutes, I don't think he could have done that. Some people are very desperate, so we thought maybe we can create a center of information or a center of a call center within our office, where we were calling refugees randomly just to know, to ask them how they are doing, so that they have this feeling of, okay, some people are thinking about us, some people out there, even though we could not have something to help them with, but that hope of knowing that someone is thinking about them could make them survive. So we have that program. It's still ongoing even now, where we call refugee, how are you doing? How is it? How is life? What do you think we can do? Do you need medication? Do you need transportation to go somewhere? And then maybe we could support the way we can. We also distribute masks. Most of them are not able to purchase masks and even sanitizers. But of course, our support as a CEO is always limited, because we do not operate in funding. We just operate through voluntary support, people who donate their small stipend. And we have our refugee friends who have been resettled to Netherlands, and others are in America. They were very, very kind to us. We had go get funding campaign, so they were able to send us money through our campaign, and that's the money that we've been using to really support people. The campaign is still ongoing, and up to date, as we are talking even now in our office in Kasarani, we are doing food distribution to refugees.
That's really lovely. I'll get back to you and maybe just ask for those who might want to collaborate with you or assist you in those initiatives, how they can reach you. I'll get to that. Maybe let me just mention to our audience that we are discussing refugees and COVID-19. If you have any questions that you would like to ask any of our guests, please feel free to post them on our comments on Facebook and also on YouTube. If you also have any contribution to share with us, please feel free to do so. So let me direct it to Charity. Maybe you can tell us, from what I'm getting from all of you, is that COVID-19 has exposed both Kenyans and refugees. All of us are getting affected in different ways. Even the strategies used by the government is targeted to both populations. So, Charity, what are some of the the opportunities that you see that Kenyans and refugees can collaborate during this time to just assist each other's life?
So thank you so much for that question. I think this shows this COVID-19 has presented us with a very unique situation, one which was not practical then, but not was just theoretical. The issue of integration and working together. So I think one of the opportunities that it presents is that since we have an economic decline, there's increase in poverty, as can the ED of Kitsuki has mentioned that most of the refugees work in the informal sector. And so one of the opportunities would be for the Kenyans to collaborate with the refugees to come up with projects. For example, we've had situations in which refugees are teaming up and forming groups to sew masks and distribute sanitizers and ensure that wherever people are living, there's clean water. So I think the issue of working together in terms of even reporting cases, we've had instances in which right now stipend is being distributed to Kenyans. Maybe they're receiving some money via M-Pesa. We're well aware that we have refugees and asylum seekers who do not have SIM cards, don't have mobile phones, don't have access to any way they can be able to get those resources. So if Kenyans would be willing to support refugees during this period as advocacy continues to target the representation of refugees in service delivery, then I think it's a good opportunity to have that happen. Yeah, so that's one of the cases. Reporting cases of SGBV, human rights violations that can be done by both host and refugees. So I think the meshing in of both populations is very important during this period because we cannot operate in silos. As Bahati mentioned, that if we are only testing Kenyans and not testing refugees, I mean, we live in the same community. So one will transmit infections and vice versa. So yeah, I think it's the time in which we can look at each other as human beings, as opposed to I'm a Kenyan, I'm a foreigner, I'm a Kenyan, I'm a refugee, and come together to be able to beat this epidemic in our country. So those are some of the opportunities I think this COVID-19 has shown us that we don't live in silos, we live in a community that comprises of different populations. So the more we embrace this particular situation, the easier it will be to beat this issue of COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Charity. And I think I would like to also ask the same question to Dr. John, although I would like to twist it a little bit. Bahati mentioned about a program called How Are You Doing? And it touches on the mental health, of refugees and even Kenyans during this time. So as a doctor, how important is it for, both populations to just have, assistance in terms of mental health, and so that we are not just concentrating on the physical health, but also the mental health? And also, what opportunities do you see where Kenyans and refugee and asylum seekers can collaborate to just help each other in terms of their mental health?
Thank you so much, Faith. On the COVID-19 has put a strain on families, and both all globally, the world over, and you can see even from the global reaction of the populations towards the measures which are being instituted over time. Of course, this is a population that's not used; it's mobile. It's not used to staying indoors, not used to these kind of vulnerabilities, and those have exacerbated the mental aspects of these of people. But what are they at this point in time to let's say like organize one-on-one counseling sessions? So we've been able to be innovative and see and extend those services via phone, and to see and to also create a network where we can flag out the vulnerable cases so that you're able to offer the mental health support. And number two, also identify the other vulnerabilities these refugees might have. Like I said, most of the things, most of the scenarios have exacerbating factors. Like you'll find most of them need livelihood support. So you're able to link that with where the support is. That way, we have a conjoined way and a collective way trying to tackle the issue of mental health. Let me quickly add, it's not only mental health where the potential disruption was going to be. You also have reproductive health, access to HIV/AIDS services. In the beginning, of course, everyone was scared and was indoors, and you'll find that mothers would deliver at home, and people living with HIV have limitation in accessing their drugs. But the government was quick to realize that that was going to be a problem, and was able to reverse to try and advocate for people to try and get people to get those services where they need. Remember, most of those services are free and are accessible to most of the Kenyans, but they have high impact and risk becoming another public health problem if they're not clearly, if the services are not accessible to the people they intend to reach. Where we can collaborate with both local hosts and Kenyans. This pandemic also has hit both Kenyans and refugees alike. Most refugees and Kenyans are at the bottom. When it comes to the socioeconomic aspects of life and of existence within the republic, are let me say they are just a paycheck away from poverty. So I think there's need to be good focus on building the resilience, both for the refugees and Kenyans, so that they're able to sustain themselves. And I think that is where the biggest challenge is, because a lot you'd see with this unemployment rate and with the job losses, everyone is left on their own. so I think that together with the government partners, the non-state actors, I think that is something which has to be collective and has to be acquire a national approach, and so that everyone is brought. You cannot elevate. You cannot only take care of the needs of the refugee without the local host, and you can also not take care of the local host without the needs of the refugees. That has to be collective, because that will solve a lot of issues and try and give dignity to both the Kenyans and the refugee. Back to you, Faith.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor. So I'll still just pass along this question to Jamin, and let's just continue to hear the various ideas and opportunities that Kenyans and refugees and asylum seekers can collaborate with each other during this time to just make life a little easier. So Jamin, you could also comment on that. And while you do, while Dr. Masiga was talking, you could hear the issue of intersectionality there. There are various things that have been affected by the pandemic. Like, it's not just one particular, it's not just health, it's the economic side of it and all this. So in case of another pandemic in the future, what should we do to protect especially those who are really vulnerable? Yeah. Jamin, welcome.
Since we have a distractions in terms of the social structure and the social coexistence that we have, then it is a call for collaboration between Kenyans and refugees in trying to alleviate this particular suffering. And this could be at the community level, through assistance to the community, through counseling, because some of the counseling that happen may not be the formal way of counseling that we have, where they will talk to a counselor here and there, but even within the communities, that the discussions about the issues that they are undergoing and how best they can be to address them at the community level, then that becomes a key aspect towards the assistance of of refugees and even the host communities in trying to deal with this particular pandemic. We acknowledge that the pandemic has hit all of us, and therefore, then in terms of crisis, then everyone comes together, we pull together as Kenyan and refugees to see each other as a brother's keeper and give them solace in these particular circumstances. I think more unity is called for at this particular time than it has been before, and therefore community activities needs to be more collaborative. Sharing of food again needs to be collaborative when looking at the vulnerable communities, because refugees also form part of the vulnerable communities. Therefore, that particular assistance happens to be key if we are to have a population post the COVID-19. In terms of future, we have to admit that the COVID-19 pandemic has got us flat-footed as a country. We have not experienced this in our lifetime. And what it has simply done, it has exposed some of our gaps in terms of service delivery and response. And future calls for us to work on more inclusion. So the earlier speakers talked about we have some inclusions that have been missing in this particular process. And therefore, we need to work out on more inclusion in terms of service delivery. That and I'll give an example. That if we have a person with disability that gets supported by the government, that they are in a government structure, then we also need to have refugees who suffer from disabilities included in that particular structure. If we have elderly people and we have poor people who get stipends, then we also need to have refugees in that particular platform. What that means is that during the pandemic, we already have the structures in place. We already have data in place in terms of how many people are we speaking about, how many dependents do they have, and if we have an assistance that we need to go to come up with, we don't need to do what we did in the first month of the pandemic in the country, where we go out to begin identifying people. Who do we identify? Who are they? How much do we give them? So that kind of a planning that is important. In the health front, I think we have hardly been exposed here that we need to look at how exactly do we make sure that we equip our medical care and get prepared for any pandemic that may come into the future. The proper planning of government, the proper mapping in terms of what particular continuous mapping about what particular services we have, where and at what particular capacity do they have, that enables us to be in a position to know how we respond to a pandemic if it comes into the future. The discussions that we have a few ICU beds in some counties would not be a discussion if we were well prepared that in case of future pandemics, we have the health capacity to handle them. We have the capacity to respond toward support for food to the vulnerable community. Which are the numbers of vulnerable communities that we speak about? We have a target of who should be more vulnerable in this particular space. How would we do an assessment, for instance, if we wanted to see the persons who have been who have hardly hit? So if we have these kinds of plans then in place, then in future we know that we will be in a position to deal with the pandemic better, because worse that even the emergency plan discussions at the Senate and the Parliament have actually been happening in the midst of this particular pandemic. Meaning it is true we never foresaw this would happen, but again, in future, we need to make sure we have everything in place so that our reaction period between when the pandemic is there, how we address it, is actually a short duration than now the lengthy period that we have been in, and after 3 months, now we are talking about we have few isolation centers, issues that would have been addressed at a very advanced stage. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamin, for that. And I would like to bring in Bahati. Listening to Jamin, it's very clear it's evident that it's important that refugee matters be mainstreamed in all aspects of our livelihoods if at all we are to deal with another pandemic in the future or another crisis in the future. So I would like to know, Bahati, what are some of the lessons that you have learned during this period? You're a refugee, you lead a refugee-led organizations. What are some of the lessons that the pandemic has taught you, has taught the organizations, and what are some of the lessons that you think we should all welcome, Bahati?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for this. What I can say is this: as far as the corona is concerned, I think this has brought a perspective of how can the government or any country that hosts refugees need to do to make refugees to be like economically people who are able to sustain themselves. Because this is what even the government of Kenya is looking at. But how can we make our people, the people who are able, even when they are saying lockdown, able even to have a saving that can sustain them for 1 or 2 or 3 months? I think that it has to be the same thing on a refugee perspective, because every time we know that refugee survive on our handouts, the thing that they do on a daily basis. That is the terrible thing that African countries are facing, and refugee included. And it's even more worse for them, because even them, the little thing that they were supposed to do, they don't even have that freedom to do it the way they were supposed, because the government has put this, so many strict things that prohibit refugees from going there and face the reality of life. So the reason, what I'm saying is this is like the government should look into allowing refugee to really go and work, because that's the only way. Because at the end, if this does not happen in this way, in the future, refugees are going to ask themselves to choose between either being killed with hunger or being killed with the coronavirus. And then, you know, the way we Africans think, something which I cannot see, I won't say that they will kill me, but hunger, I can feel it. If I'm hungry for 3 days, I know that if it goes for another 3 days, biologically, I will die. But Corona hasn't reached yet. I'm not coughing. I'm not having anything. So I think I need to go to what is going to kill me first, which is hunger. So I'll just go out and look for food, and then at least survive for 3 days with Corona as I'm still alive. So I think this is something that the people need to look into. How can we make sure refugees are able enough to be people who are self-sufficient, and by making them self-sufficient, allowing them to work, not like breaking those rules that say refugees do not need to work without work permit. If you can do something in a world where people, every human being has the right to strive for their life, they need to make us strive and not just be people who are surviving on every time. So I think this is what we need to do. But for refugees, somehow their hands are tied, because there's nothing they can do unless the government open the doors for them and allow them to go there and face the reality of life. That's what I think I can add.
Yeah, thank you for that. And maybe just you mentioned a couple of projects that Kintsugi is involved in. Let me ask: are the public, like our audience, are we allowed to participate in what you're doing? And if yes, how can we do so? How can people be of help to the projects that you're running to assist refugees during this time?
Yeah, like I said, I'm going to urge to every individual and every organization who may have some slot. Let's say they have food, because the office is closed, there's no way they can distribute that food because of the government instructions. But we are there in the community, our office are located there. You can bring your food to our station and we can really give them to refugees. And then if maybe the policy of the organization does not allow you maybe to donate food to another organization, you can even come with your staff. We can give you a space in our area. You can be able to deliver your food, because for us the most important is to see our people are being fed. We have a campaign going on. You can visit our website. It's www.kintsugi.co.ke. There's the donation column that you can go there and donate to our Go Get funding campaign, and whichever thing that you can be able to donate is important. Another thing I'm going to ask Kenyan is, we are in a fold. We receive clothing. Some refugees, sometimes people don't understand when a situation, when you're not in that situation. Some refugees cannot even have been chased out of their house. They are sleeping in churches now. And you know, we have just entered the period of cold weather. So you can imagine a mother with some children who are sleeping in church at this time. It's really, 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 I don't know what I can tell you guys to just feel that. So kindly, if you are listening to us and you have some clothes in your house that you can donate to us, on our website, there's some contacts. You can call us to the number that is in our, even here in our box. I can put my number here, so you can call us. And but the most important thing that we are asking for now is anyone with any capacity you have to give us food to give to people. If you think you have food to give, and doesn't need to be an organization of donating to us. No, if you have a sack of rice and you want to give us 10 kg of it or 5 kg of it, please just call us. Imagine we'll come for that, because someone is going to eat that rice and they will be grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Bahati. Thank you for that. So if you would like to partner with Kintsugi, you can either get in touch with me via Refu-Poet. You can inbox us, or you can leave a comment, or you could go to Kintsugi's website, www.kintsugi.co.ke, and you can get the contacts there and donate and be of help. So keep on commenting. People are loving the discussion. I see Rabian saying the discussion is interesting. Good job. Hi, I like the talk. I hope you're recording for those who have missed and may want to see the session. Absolutely, we are recording, and we will post this video after this live feed is up. I can see Kim Chokera saying this is informative, and Shem Alubaba saying great stuff. So we have a few minutes left. I would like to talk to Charity. Are there some things that you have picked up during this conversation that you would like to point on or talk about or shed more light on, or any parting shot you would have to us and to the audience as well?
Thank you so much, Faith. So one of the things I've picked up from this conversation is that we are well aware that this approach to COVID-19 is not in one phase. It's a multi-sectoral approach. That means civil society organizations, the government, the refugee-led organizations have to work together to be able to combat this pandemic. One of the things I'd like to encourage, especially when Jamie was talking about us guys getting prepared for something like this to happen, if it was to happen again, is that we need data collection, evidence data collection that can be used in planning purposes. For example, when they are talking about distributing to vulnerable communities and things like that, we could make use of the mainstream agencies and also refugee-led organizations to be able to get the numbers, so that if an opportunity presents itself that the government wants to partner with the refugees, then we have evidence of numbers, mapped out populations where they can be found, that will enable them to have easy transmission of these services to them. The other thing I've picked up is on psychosocial support. One thing I'd forgotten to mention is that, yes, that Dr. Masinga helped mention, is that it will also offer psychosocial support. So I think for both, as also Kintsugi is doing really well, the issue of checking up on your neighbor, finding out how they are doing, just making calls, because I know right now we are not able to see them one-on-one, but we usually follow up in calls when we do detention monitoring, going to look for refugees and asylum seekers in the stations. We usually flag out some of these cases and then forward them for psychosocial support. So I think it's a long game. It's not just for COVID-19. I think some of the lessons we've learned during this period should be taken into the future post-COVID-19, and that we should learn that building resilience is what is most important, because that is what is sustainable. As Bahati was saying, it's either you die of hunger or you die from the disease, you know. So if they were in a position where they would be able to access work, that means they would be able to save. That means the capacity in which they will be in would not be as dire as is now. Because you see, the numbers are many. We cannot obviously sustain a population only on handouts. There's an aspect of moving from just giving handouts to building their resilience to live here. The presumption before was that the refugee status is not permanent. There were the issues of resettlement. People had the hopes of leaving, but now they've been here. We've had Bahati has been here for 11 years. There's no way we would encourage restrictive policies to prevent them from working, from getting wage earning employment. Those are different. You can start a business, that's okay. But if you also have the opportunity of starting, of applying for a job and being given a job to work and to enhance your economic status, to elevate your family, I think that would build more resilience and that would make the situation for the refugee better. So I think it's a long game, and that would be my parting shot. That we should not just think of it as just during the COVID-19 period. We should think of plans and strategies that will go post COVID-19 and pick up, because we can see people are working together now that we're in a crisis. So I hope that Kenyans and refugees will see this as an opportunity to continue seeing each other as human beings, as people who are in the community of Kenya and work together for the future.
Thank you so much, Charity. And there's Winnie Mutevu who is saying, what Charity is talking about is very critical, taking care of our mental health and support those in our circles, just being kinder, even to strangers. Absolutely, Winnie. Thank you so much. In this discussion that you would like to comment on, and what are some of the lessons you have learned during this period? What are your parting shots?
Oh, thank you, Faith. This pandemic has shaken everyone in the planet, and everybody has been affected. What the two things that stick out to me and that affect everyone, refugees alike and nationals alike, everyone, who doesn't matter whichever part of the globe you are. With public healthcare systems, you are just as weak as the link. You are as strong as the weakest link. There's need to re-examine our response to this pandemic. And pandemic are complex and rare events, but when they happen, they really come with a bang, as everyone has seen for themselves. I think globally, of course, there's a need to strengthen better coordination mechanisms between the countries and etc. Locally and regionally, of course, regionally now also there's need of rapid response mechanisms within Africa itself and within East Africa itself, and nationally here we need also to strengthen our health system, and also locally. Even within the space we have as healthcare practitioners, we need to strengthen that so that the interventions are people-centered and they protect the citizens. It doesn't matter wherever they are, both poor and the rich, because all of them are affected. So for my areas of interventions in terms of moving forward for the healthcare sector, basically to strengthen the water and sanitation health mechanisms. And that this affects also even the refugee camps, for instance. There's need to invest also and strengthen the healthcare systems within these areas, especially for the most vulnerable, and also scale up public health interventions, e.g. vaccinations, etc., because we are still vulnerable to even other epidemics like cholera epidemics, like measles, which and in future will still be vulnerable to other bigger pandemics. And on the second front is this need to re-examine how our livelihood support systems are, especially for the refugees. They are really vulnerable, and we need to scale up on how we can strengthen the support we give to refugees in terms of making them independent so that they can be able to earn a livelihood for themselves and sustain themselves in a better way, in a more sustainable way, and in a more inclusive way with the local host population. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much. We're almost winding up. And before I head to Jamin and close with Bahati, I would just like to thank everyone who is joining us. Thank you for following this conversation. I would just like to point out that at Refu Poet, what we do is we use art to raise awareness on refugee matters and tell refugee stories. And for that matter, we have an online festival on the 20th of June this month, where we're just going to be celebrating refugees on the World Refugee Day using poetry, using music, and using dance, because for artists, that's what we know how to do best. So I would really encourage you all to make sure that you're following our pages so that you can get the links to everything. Please share this page with your friends, and let's continue to take care of each other by taking care of those who are vulnerable, especially the refugees. So I would like to bring in Jamin. What are your parting shots? What have you picked up from this conversation, and what would you like to leave with the audience today?
All persons, both Kenyans and is alike. And I would say that though a pandemic brings out new issues, what it most importantly does, it actually exposes inefficiencies in service delivery and response of a particular state. And therefore, they need to go out and look at how exactly have our systems been in dealing with some of the issues that we have been having. And truth be told, that it is true that we have had inefficiencies in terms of how we respond to livelihood opportunities to refugees. What this particular pandemic has come to do, it has come to blow up the entire inefficiencies that we have been having, and therefore rendered a majority of persons vulnerable in their need food, housing, and even clothing. And therefore, moving forward, I think government needs to work on the inclusion of refugees in its own planning. As Bahati mentioned earlier, that what is the framework of refugees' right to work? Can they be in a position to participate in the formal employment space that we have? How can we remove the bottlenecks that exist that would require them to be in a position to demonstrate too much threshold before they are included in our formal economy? Because if that is in place, then we are certain that we have few vulnerable persons if we are hit by a pandemic. I would dare say that we don't have vulnerable refugees now because of the pandemic. Refugees have been vulnerable. And therefore, what the pandemic does, it has actually come to capitalize on that particular vulnerability. If we had dealt with that aspect of vulnerability by making sure that we include them in our formal economy, that they can get employed if they qualify and have the skills that they have, that we remove the high restrictions in terms of how much capital they will require to get work permit, and how much skills they are needed to be in a position to be employed in the formal economy, then we can be in a position to deal with some of these particular issues, and that when the pandemic comes, they are not completely hit by the pandemic. What are the social assistance programs we have in our ministry? For instance, the Ministry of Labor and Social Assistance. Are they inclusive of refugees? If they were inclusive of refugees, we'll be saying that we have a plan of how we can be in a position to incorporate all persons into service delivery when this kind of pandemics actually come. So my last call is inclusion. That we have a community displaced but living amongst ourselves, and therefore we need to work and include them in all our undertakings if we are then to have a stronger society and a less vulnerable society. That's for me.
Yes, thank you so much, Jamin. So let's hear from Bahati. Bahati, what are your parting shots?
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. I'm thankful, by the way, for making us be part of this interesting conversation, and I'm very happy for all the panelists and the people who are listening to us. My last word will be, I just want, in this situation, the only way we can get through this is to think as we, not as me. this has been always the problem that we've been facing in fighting the pandemic. But if you think as we are going to overcome these things, and I'm going also to give a message to the NGOs that are doing an amazing work out there. But the problem is every NGO is working on their own. There's no like a common effort where NGO put effort together to see how they can work into this thing in a different way, because this is not a usual circumstance like how we used to operate in the past. So every NGO stuck to their target, to their project, to their. But I think if we forget about a little bit about the usual and normal thing that we've been doing before and think differently and work together toward how can we really now face this thing that is affecting us? I think refugee will not suffer. I'm talking especially to people who are NGO who are focused on refugees. And I'm also going to ask every person, because this I think God has brought something to our mind to just think that now, no matter what you do, no matter how you call yourself a refugee or something like that, we are all human beings after all. Because there's nothing, and God has really proven it to us that we are all human beings. So I believe that what we can do is to know that we just remove those barriers that are between us and work together toward achieving this. So
thank you.
My last word
thank
is
you, Bahati. Thank you, Jamin.
Together. Let's think as
I'm sorry, I cut you off. You can just finish your thoughts. Sorry.
I said, let's think as we and not as me for be able to fight this pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's think as we and not as me. Thank you, Bahati. Thank you, Jamin. Thank you, Dr. John. Thank you, Charity, so much for honoring us with your time and with your wisdom. We are really, really honored and appreciative of your time. Thank you so much for making this happen. I would also like to thank all the people who've been joining us. Nyamori Victor says strong comments from Bahati. Masoni Valentino says a very informative discussion. And we have so many other participants who have joined this live stream. Thank you so much. Just to remind you, this is a week-long conversation. Tomorrow we will be talking about refugees and livelihoods, something which we have already touched on. As the speakers were talking, we could hear some of those issues come through, and we will be talking with representatives from the Danish Refugee Council. So please make sure to tune in from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. I think I would like to close this off right here by just saying thank you. Be kind, be thoughtful to your neighbor, especially your vulnerable neighbor. Don't just think of yourself. Think as we, not as me. Thank you, guys, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.